So Ryan Fortnine says variable valves are bad for the BMW R1250GS. Well, today I'm going to tell you why they're actually good. So before I start, I want to say that this is not a criticism of Ryan's review of the GS or on his channel. I love and respect every single one of his videos. I think his content is probably the best motorcycle content on YouTube, as I'm sure many of you do as well. But as someone who's owned now 4 different GSs, I want to take a few moments today to tell you why I think the 1250 engine is such a huge improvement over the previous models and how the shiftcam system, the variable valves, have helped us get to this point. The BMW Boxer engine is one of BMW's hallmarks. Whether you love it or whether you hate it, it is here to stay. Personally, I love the Boxer engine for a few reasons. It makes the bike have a low center of gravity. It handles unlike any other motorcycle. In my experience, your mileage may vary. I like how when you drop the bike, which you will if it's an adventure bike, you don't have to pick it up all the way. It only drops over part of the way, so I like that. I like how easy it is to service. Doing valve checks and things like that is very easy because the valve cover sticks out the side. Now there is a downside to the Boxer engine. Well, there's actually multiple downsides, but I'm only going to talk about one. It doesn't make power quite as well as maybe a V-twin or an inline engine might. So in order for BMW to sort of stay in the heat, stay in the competition and the numbers game with horsepower and torque, with people like BMW and Ducati and others, they have to bring some more technology to the Boxer to try to keep those power levels creeping up and to stay competitive. So Ryan did an amazing job, as always, in his video explaining how the BMW shiftcam system works. But here's the basics of it, just if you want to get up to speed. So essentially the camshaft has 2 different profiles mounted right next to each other. When you open or close the throttle, the Bosch electronic solenoid in the engine computer knows that you're opening or closing the throttle, and it moves that camshaft, shifts it within 10 milliseconds back and forth, either to give you the full load cam or the partial load cam. Like I said, this change happens within 10 milliseconds, so you really don't notice anything happening. So first, let me offer some alternative points of view to Ryan's main points about why he doesn't like the variable valves, and then we'll go into 5 reasons why I think the new engine is so great and why I think it actually benefits from this technology. So first, I do agree that BMW would have been better off using a continuously variable valve system instead of just this shift cam, which gives you what Ryan called a bimodal power band, which is pretty much true. Second, variable valves are really common in the automotive world, and they're becoming very common in the motorcycle world. So I don't think this is a technology we're going to be able to hide from. Ryan says that because it has an electronic solenoid actuation in the cylinder head, that's going to make the bike more unreliable. Well, we don't really know if that's true. It's possible, and it is true that this is adding more complication to an already complex bike. But I really feel that this bike is not about round-the-world travel if you want a reliable, simple, durable motorcycle. It's the opposite of that. It's for wealthy people in developed nations to go sport touring and adventure touring on and have a great experience and benefit from the technology that this bike has. I ride a GS because it can do fire roads and off-road, it can do sport touring twisties, it can do commuting, and it can go down the freeway and float down the freeway at 90 miles an hour on cruise control just as good as a Honda Goldwing can, and that's why I love this bike. It's like every street bike that I want wrapped up into one amazing package. So I mentioned there's 5 reasons why I think the shiftcam system is a benefit to the Boxer engine, so let's go through those right now. The first thing is something you're going to notice if you're coming off an older Boxer engine, and that is the smoother low RPM running. So you can lug this bike down to 1500 to 2000 RPMs, open the throttle all the way, and the motorcycle, the engine is very smooth and it doesn't have any problem or any chugging or any stuttering at those low RPMs. And that's a big difference from the older Boxer engines, even from the liquid-cooled engines between 2013 and 2018 before they went to the shiftcam. This better low RPM running makes the bike feel more refined, feel more modern, feel more luxurious. It makes it ride better in the twisties on the street, and it's also better for off-road because you can stay maybe in 2nd or 3rd gear on the trail longer without having to downshift to 1st gear. So it's a really huge benefit for all types of riding situations and just makes the motorcycle feel more premium. The second reason I think the shiftcam is an improvement is what they were able to do with the torque of the engine. So the 1250 has a 14% increase in torque. It went from like 92 foot-pounds up to 105 foot-pounds. That's a very, very nice improvement. And I promise you, when you ride the 1250 back to back with the old 1200, you immediately feel the increased torque of the engine. And I think it's a great thing because horsepower is kind of overrated. Everybody wants to brag about the horsepower, but torque is what you feel at any RPM, and it's really what is that force that's shoving you forward. So I really enjoy a motorcycle with a lot of torque, and the GS delivers that. My third reason is that the engine revs out better. It runs better at high RPM. So when you're going up to the power band and really accelerating the bike hard, it doesn't sort of fall off and feel more rough and not as powerful as the old bike did. Not to say that the liquid-cooled 1200 engine was any sort of slouch, because it wasn't, and it was especially good back in 2013 when it launched. But this engine just feels that much more competitive with engines from like Ducati and KTM and other higher end manufacturers that are putting out all that horsepower. The fourth reason I have that I think the shiftcam is good for the bike is that it increases the fuel economy. So BMW says that the fuel economy got better by about 4%. In my experience, that might even be conservative. I feel like my old bike, I was getting around low 40s, and in this bike, I'm getting like mid to high 40s, sometimes over 50 miles a gallon with the 1250. And keep in mind, I went from a standard GS to an adventure GS, which is actually heavier and has more surface area in the front for wind. So I think that the improvement in efficiency is great. It gives you more riding range before you have to stop for fuel. So the fifth and final reason that I think it's great that they did the shiftcam system is that it reduces the emissions of the bike. So we all want to be more environmentally friendly these days. We all want to reduce our pollution. And so it may seem like a minor thing, making motorcycles pollute less or the GS pollute less, but it all does add up. So the fact that it meets Euro 5 now, which they had to do, so they bored out the engine, made it larger, and they added the shift cam, it pollutes less, and that's a great thing for the planet. So I have no problem with that. So when you add up all these things, what it contributes to is a better riding experience. You have a more efficient motorcycle. You have a more powerful motorcycle, more torque, that's also more efficient and also pollutes less and also runs better at all RPMs, feels more modern, feels more premium. And that's what GS buyers expect. I mean, let's be honest, this is a high-end part of the motorcycle market, and BMW has to deliver on that. And in order to keep the Boxer engine relevant, they're going to have to do things like variable valve timing. And if you think this is the only motorcycle engine out there that's going to have complicated technology like variable valves, you'd be very, very wrong about that. If you watch the Fortnine video carefully, you notice that he points out a few things about the GS that are absolutely true. It turns on a dime at the flick of a wrist because it has so much torque. When you're off-road, you can steer with the back end really easily. It's extremely comfortable at all different speeds. It's a great highway tourer. You can sit on it all day. He also mentioned that the bike floats uphill at idle, which is true. It really does do that. That's not just hype. And I think that was really aided by the shiftcam system, making the motor run smoother at low RPM, which was always a complaint I had about previous Boxers. So it's probably obvious by now, I love the 1250 GS. I love this engine, even compared to the engine that preceded it, the liquid-cooled 1200 engine, and I definitely think it's worth the upgrade. I agree with Ryan and with other commenters who've said that, they could have used a more modern system, something like a continuously variable valve train. Honestly, I'm not very concerned about the reliability. I plan to own this bike under warranty, and if I do own it outside of warranty, I'm honestly not worried about it at that point either. I would never go back to the 1200 engine after having ridden this bike, even if the 1200 maybe is a little bit simpler and doesn't have those variable valves. I think that the trade-off of having the variable valves and the increased benefits that it provides, which I just talked about, is worth the slightly increased complexity in the engine. Also, as someone who's owned and loved an F800GS, just like Ryan has on his channel, I really have to say that I prefer the 1200 and the 1250 platform to the 800 platform. And it's all the reasons I've talked about in this video, but while the specs may show that the bike is larger and heavier on paper and more complex, in reality, when I ride the bike, the Boxer engine bikes feel lighter to me than the parallel twin 800 bikes did. Take it for what it's worth. That's my 2 cents. That's how I feel. Are the 1200s and 1250s as good off-road? No, because they're heavier and larger, and if you get them stuck, they're a lot more work to get unstuck. But overall, the 1250 has like 70% more power than the 800 had, and I would never go back to the 800 GS after having this. In my opinion, the BMW GS is not the world travel bike that BMW would like you to think it is. I know there are people who use it that way, and I respect that and I appreciate that, But I really feel that if you're going on a round-the-world type trip where reliability is important and ease of maintenance is important and simplicity is important, then you should not be riding any of the modern-day technologically advanced large motorcycles, whether it's a GS, a KTM 1290, or even 790, or anything in that category. Ducati Multistrada, I wouldn't recommend any of these bikes. They have way too much weight, they have way too much complexity, too many electronics, and you're not going to be able to work on them in undeveloped nations. I think what the GS does better than almost any other bike is it's a multi-purpose motorcycle that can do everything from dirt roads and trails to iron butt rides, to carving up the twisties, to commuting, and everything in between. And I think it does that, it covers that spectrum better than just about any other motorcycle that I've ever ridden. The GS is a bike for someone like me who embraces technology and appreciates what it can add to the motorcycling experience instead of what it might take away. Thanks again for watching. Please hit the thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And Ryan, if you're watching, I love you. I love your channel. Please keep going and all that you're doing. Thank you guys for your support, and we'll see you next time.